Hi, I'm Shivee. I'm going to explain the Think Aloud strategy for classroom use. And the Think Aloud strategy is basically explaining one's way of thinking out loud. So you're simply modeling how you think to your students, and you would be doing this very explicitly as possible. And this strategy is great for any sort of classroom environment, whether it's proficient English language speakers, ELL, ESL, any level of classroom, younger students, high school students, or any subject area, math, science, phys ed, English, anything really. So for a science context, it can be used whether you're reading text, you would be explaining to students, how do I read this text? Am I looking at the figure while I'm reading? Am I reading and then looking at the figure? Am I relating the figure to the reading? Am I looking at the key terms? Am I breaking down the key terms? And so reading is an active process. However, students don't know this until it's modeled for them. So it's very important to model how we read. It's good for modeling research, and students don't know how to research or what questions to ask when researching. So this is a great strategy to teach them, okay, how do I research? How do I go about finding information that I need to find, or sifting through information that's important to me? It's good for teaching students how to approach inquiry-based projects and labs. Those can be very daunting when read over at a glance. However, if you model for them, how am I going to do this, then it makes the task seemingly easier. And for science problems, which is what I will be demonstrating today. So why would I use Think Aloud? Basically, it's a scaffold for students because it demonstrates how I think. It's going to break down a problem or a process of doing something into understandable bits. It shows how I approach this, how I do this, and this is very important because in schools we teach students the content. However, we don't teach them how to approach this content. So that's why it's very important. Okay. So the example I'm going to use is a Punnett square problem, commonly found in junior to high school biology. So what I would do is I would narrate my thinking process for my students. So I'm going to narrate for you what I would narrate for my students. A little bit of inception here. So I'm going to tell my students, I'm going to go ahead and read this problem over once. In pea plants, purple flowers are dominant to white flowers. If two white-flowered plants are crossed, what percentage of their offspring will be white-flowered? I've read the question once. Now I'm going to read it again. In pea plants, purple flowers are dominant to white flowers. Okay, pause. What does that mean to me? Purple flowers are dominant. What does dominant mean? So if purple flowers are dominant, then that means they have a dominant gene. If they have a dominant gene, then that means that gene is overpowering the recessive gene. So what genotype put together? Now I'm assuming my students already know what genotype and phenotype means, so I'm not going to explain those. But what genotype would show me the color purple? How can I see the color purple? They would have to have big P, and big P, little p to show me the color purple. Now I'm going to go back and think, okay, if the purple flower gene is dominant, that means the white flower ones must be recessive. If they're recessive, how does something show me that recessive phenotype? How would a flower be white? It would have to be little p, little p. Now what is the question asking me? If two white-flowered plants are crossed, what percentage of their offspring will be white-flowered? Okay, going back, if two white-flowered plants are crossed, what does that mean? Okay, so it's asking me if two of the white flowers, which means the genotype for both of them must be little p crossed with little p. And here I would model for my students how to draw the Punnett square and where I would put little p. What percentage will be, now the question is asking me what percentage will be white-flowered. So after I do my cross and do my Punnett square, I'm going to see that all of the offspring come off as little p. All of them. So the question is asking me for percentage. So if I'm trying to represent all of them, 100, it would be 100%, right? And so that's exactly how I would model this. This is how I thought about the problem. And yes, I'll let you read over that. Yes. So as you model this, you have to engage students in the think aloud. You have to start asking them questions, and it can be used as formative assessments because you can have students explain their thinking when